All right, guys. Good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, May 18th, and a huge move for the markets today. So we've got some things to talk about today. So a couple major announcements. Well, one was an announcement, one was basically just an interview. But the first thing that we bit of information that we got was Powell last night speaking at on 60 Minutes and basically saying that they've got plenty of ammo. One of the things that I took away from watching that 60 Minutes interview with Powell was that he said this is not 2008. This is something completely different. So interesting because he said it. He seemed to set a different tone last Wednesday. Kind of bad cop, and last night he was kind of good cop. So he of course talked about how this is going to take a while and so forth for the economy to recover. But he seemed to have a pretty optimistic tone that this is eventually going to work its way through, and that this is not 2008. And that kind of hit home with me because I've been saying that too. We've got something different. I think a lot of technical analysis try to kind of grasp at things that they think that they may have seen before, or they're thinking that history rhymes a bit. So I've seen a lot of over analysis based on what's going on today, and presently going on to what's going on in 2008. And I know from trading back then that this is way different. Now, again, I've said for a while that there's lessons to be learned from that particular time in trading, and when to add risk, and when to stop yourself out of trades. But I think that's where the comparisons end, right? Because we've heard a lot of people talk about bear market bounces and so on and so forth, but this, we're dealing with a completely different animal. So, bottom line, that was number one. Number two was, basically right before this morning, we heard that Moderna is, basically making some progress on a vaccine. So that was, I thought, the main thing. I thought, going into today that we had a nice move into the open, but this really was the catalyst for today, and was basically a good spark for areas that had been really beaten down. Right. So one of the things I said was, we've talked about the haves and the have-nots. Well, there's a rush back into some of these depressed areas. Your travel and leisure, your energy, of course, too. You could put in that bucket. Your home builders, right? You could see on the left. So travel and leisure, because what it basically does is it shifts the timeline, right? We've been hearing about a lot of speculation about if, when, who knows when they're going to have a vaccine. And I think a lot of the scientists have said that it's going to happen sometime, or could happen, right? Everything is a possibility. 2021. And the administration, Trump, has been saying that, hey, we might be able to get this at the end of the year. And then Moderna comes out today and says that they've got a positive trial, which could even, who knows, it could have the possibility to come faster than that. So it really changes all the models, like all the models that brokers have, that investment managers have about, hey, well, I'm not going to own these travel and leisure stocks because it's going to be a long time before people get back on planes. Well, if you move the timeline forward, there's a massive move into some of these areas that have gotten pretty hit. So that's my explanation for today. And if we look at some things, one of the relationships that I've been talking about now for weeks is this value versus growth, and this is just today. So it just kind of gives you a feel. I saw a lot of names, a lot of growth names that have done really well the last month. Right? There's a little bit of profit taking in those names today, and and a move and a chase into the value names. And you could see this through this representation, right? So this is just small cap value versus growth, and you could see it basically outperformed all day. But if you were long some growth names, and today, I mean, the performance again, I mean, the Qs even finished up 1.8% for the day. They even advanced after the open. And I mean, look at small caps. We're up 6% last week after they underperformed last week. What was also a bit telling was what transpired as well in the bonds. TLT was down 2.2% for the day, so it was pretty much very risk on. I would also classify this, but I have to tell you, I was not expecting this type of move, from the end of the week, and I was very happy at the way that last week ended. I had a great week considering that the market was down, and I basically just took a lot of profits, and I said, hey, I'm going to go into the weekend, with less exposure. So this, and some of the names, I even had mRNA on, and I cut it. So this was a little bit of a frustrating day for me because there was so much going on today where there was ample names that you could have owned into today, and you know, that was a little bit frustrating for me. I got out of this. So again, it is what it is, and I've been pretty much positioned with sticking with the trend, and that remains in growth. And I haven't really played too much with getting involved in value. I owned a KRE trade about which expired on Friday. For basically almost a full loss. It's hit one target in it, but. So you have to be, I've said for a while that you have to be careful in names that are in downtrends. They may bounce, and when they bounce, they have, a really nice move. I played some Apple today, which worked pretty well. I tried to chase a couple things like a retailer like AEO. It just didn't have enough to it. But there was, if we go to this, perhaps I just didn't pick wisely. Like I said, Apple worked fine for me, but if you're looking at some of these groups, like the home builders actually advanced 5% past the open, right? So this column that I've got here is percentage change from the open. Now, for the whole day, I highlighted all these various different groups that were up over 9% for the day. Just tells you, number one, not only was it a bit of a chase into some of these have-not areas, but also I think a lot of short covering. It really causes the shorts to realize, hey, I'm off. I'm off on these trades. I got to get out of them quickly, right? And we see that from time to time. You get the squeeze, and I think that's kind of what happened. There's a lot of shorts that have been in the banks and so forth, and we started to see some call buying in a few different of the bank names last week. There just wasn't any follow through, right? I think that was what day was that? That was Wednesday or Thursday last week, where these banks got going, and then they basically stalled out. So, for example, Wells Fargo, that was Thursday. Yeah, and then on Friday, basically gave almost half it back. So, if you could catch these groups when this happens, it is a wonderful day for you. The other thing that remember last week too, the one of the things that we were just talking about in the trading room towards the end of the day is that we've heard from a lot of big institutional investors saying that Stanley Druckenmiller was on last week saying that this is one of the worst risk to reward situations he's ever seen. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I may have gotten that quote a little bit wrong, so don't get excited. But that was one of the things that he said. So it's been kind of tough to stay in this market because Tepper came on, which I think he did what he had to do last week and basically just say, it is what it is. We're in a situation under lockdown. Yeah, it's tough to buy here. Now, the 13Fs did come out and showed that they were, a lot of these guys added, but we don't know at what point they added. Probably somewhere around the lows, less probably in the last couple of weeks, considering what they've said. So you just kind of have to remember that, regardless of what kind of day you had, and if you had a great day, congratulations to you. But I would come back to, I don't think they're making it easy for you to stay in this market with somebody coming out every day saying that this is not a market to really stay in. So I just kind of was thinking about that at the end of the day. I think the main question, we'll go through a couple of charts, but the main question is, just like we had this day, Chasing can be very painful sometimes if you're chasing and it's a 1 day effect. So, like I said, I didn't really do much, chasing into value today, and I may be regretting that. We'll see. But remember last week, if you chased Wells Fargo, like through the end of the session, on Friday you kind of sat with a 2.9% loss. Or if you look at this XLF. All right, if you look at the XLF, and a similar aspect, at least it wasn't down that much on Friday, but it gained 2.6% on Thursday, and then gave it back, and then a big move today. So the way that I would kind of think about things is, I mean, I think it's possible that this could be multiple days. We did see a little bit of IWM call buying, but looking at the charts for the day, again, up 3.5% for the S&P, very very strong. And we'll just I'll wait till this comes up here on the daily chart, so you can see where the other thing that's notable here is this is basically where we were, back on 429. So we've done a lot of sideways action. This is the first close above value for the month. We'll see if this can kind of trigger continuation. Qs, by the way, continuing to move closer to this VPOC up here, which I think is going to be a great place to take profits in this group. And then, we'll see. The thing that concerns me, and what I went over a bit in the weekend video, was that sentiment is really hot right now. And I'm using the models that I uses the Citigroup Panic Euphoria model. I also look at the NASDAQ Sentiment Index. So that's the other thing that makes it a little bit challenging. But I think that this group, it could continue to rally a little bit. This is IWM. This is kind of how I would think about maybe playing it a bit. Something that's under owned like this may begin to outperform. It certainly hasn't done that much. It is above this trend line. It's outside of value, and this again would continue to be like a counter trend bounce for now, because as we know on the weekly chart, small caps are below value. So we've seen this a couple times. Big outperformance here, and then we kind of fell back. A little bit of outperformance here, and then they fell back again. Had a bad week last week, but I think this might be a little bit different. This is the first time that we've heard a company, say that besides Gilead, right? Gilead was a few weeks ago, which I think caused this too. But I think overall it's good. It's good news, and it's great news for the country, and anybody who has this or who is gonna come down with this. So overall, great news. Just kind of have to figure out how to position, of course. But I think that you may get a little bit more effect here in small caps. If I had to go out on a limb and make a prediction, I think this would be a better place to kind of be in for now. And we'll see. So we'll see. Granted, I didn't put on anything at the end of the day today. I thought about it, but like I said, I think that names like Apple. So why did I trade Apple today? Because it's kind of in the middle of growth and value. So I think that this 320 could come into play. There's a VPOC on 320 and 324 in Apple. And there's also a VPOC up here at 322. So that's what I'm looking at for Apple, for this to be taken out. And I did go home wearing some. I took profits, and I think I hit 3 targets in an Apple trade today, and I'm wearing the rest of it. Also, what I thought was really interesting is the Chinese internet names. I see Baidu just reported. I'll bring up them in a second. But I tweeted this out at the end of last week, talking about the Chinese internet names. I've been on fire. This was JD, which that's the name that I'm long. JD was up 9% today, and I am long this. This is in the tactical portfolio, so that's I've been holding. Baba reports this week. Now, Baba, we talked about Baba in the weekend video, and I said, hey, well, the only issue is that it's in value. It's not in value anymore, and it looks like it's going to be headed towards that 220 VPOC. And then names like SE, which is also an Asian name, this thing was up 12%. Billy. So really some strong momentum going on finally in some place other than the US. I've talked about that before as an issue. But look at the momentum in this group of stocks. And again, I tweeted this out towards the end of last week and said, hey, is anybody noticing the strength that's going on? I think today more people noticed. Let's see what Baidu's doing here after the close. I'm hearing it was a beat and raise. This Baidu was up 7% last week. And it looks like the results were pretty good considering the price action. Let's see what we got here. Revenue 25 billion versus that's guidance 25 to 27, estimates 25. So they're upping their guidance. Very very good. So interesting that that China, and I did hear a couple of research notes too saying that China is coming back online very quickly in the last couple of weeks. I know the data has that's been coming out of China has been weak, but that's always a little bit lagging. All right, guys. So we'll leave it there for the day, but a huge first day of the week, guys. Have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.